Its concession that it was possible that extraterrestrials were visiting us raised the UFO debate to another level. A major establishment astronomer and a man trusted by the Air Force was now saying that intergalactic spacecraft could be traveling through our solar system. His pronouncements caused scientists who might otherwise have stayed out of the UFO debate to enter it. They called Hynek's proposition fantasy.
But if we just think of our own galaxy, you know, it's 100,000 light years across. That means to travel from one side of that galaxy to another side, to the other extreme edge, would take you 100,000 years if you traveled at the speed of light. Now, there's very good evidence that nothing travels faster than the speed of light. I mean, it seems to be the ultimate speed limit in the universe.
If, however, aliens know something we don't, suppose they are able to transform space and time or manipulate space and time in some way, or travel in other dimensions, then all things are possible.
As man has entered the space age, the concept that all things are possible has indeed become part of a new way of thinking. Some of the men who investigated Blue Book were born before the Wright brothers flew a Kitty Hawk. They conducted their investigation before man flew faster than the speed of sound. Even the men who flew our space missions concede unusual experiences that they cannot explain. Astronauts like James McDivitt on Gemini 4 and Ed White have reported seeing unidentified flying objects in space. Pete Conrad on Gemini 11 in 1966 is another of the 11 astronauts who have seen UFOs on NASA space flights. Some of these objects the astronauts saw were photographed. NASA has called some of these sun flares or space debris. Some are still labeled unidentified. Astronaut Gordon Cooper was so impressed with an unidentified flying object he saw that he wrote about it to a special United Nations commission studying the phenomena. He wrote, "I believe these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets, which obviously are a lot more technically advanced than we are here on Earth." Recently, Cooper reversed himself. He does not now believe that what he saw was an extraterrestrial spacecraft. Another of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, however, has not changed his mind about what he saw on a test pilot flight in 1952. Deke Slayton.
As I closed on this thing, well, it looked like a weather balloon, and that's what I presumed it was. And I had plenty of gas and time, so I decided I'd just come back around and make a pass on it. And I got around where I should have been coming back on this thing. All of a sudden, it didn't look like a balloon anymore. It looked like a saucer sitting on edge, about a 45-degree angle. I didn't have any gun camera film on board, unfortunately, or I'd have shot some pictures of it. And about that time, I guess whatever it was, for whatever reason, just took off climbing at about a 45-degree angle and just accelerated and disappeared. And I obviously couldn't follow it with an old piston engine fighter. So I turned around and went home.
Some UFO observers, however, have had camera and film on hand at the critical moment. This footage was shot from a helicopter off Catalina Island in 1966. Some say this is a single-wing aircraft. This film was shot by the coach of the Great Falls, Montana minor league baseball team in 1950. The Air Force says it is a picture of two aircraft. This film was shot by a newsreel unit in Guatemala in 1976. Some say this is also an aircraft. This film was taken by a Navy cameraman on vacation in Tremonton, Utah in 1952. The Air Force speculates that these are seagulls. Dr. Hynek disputes the Air Force's explanation of these films. This, plus his feelings about the eyewitnesses, helped change his mind.
I began to get certain doubts because not so much of any specific case, although there were quite a few. It was the people themselves. I said to myself, well, now, come on, how much longer am I going to call these people crazy? And when I changed my glasses, you might say, a little bit, and took a view that maybe these people aren't crazy, and began to realize what sort of people they were, the people who would be accepted in any court of law as a witness, let's say, good, solid people. I said to myself, well, the time has come to maybe change my attitude.
It was Hynek who coined the expressions close encounters of the first, second, and third kinds. A close encounter of the first kind is one that centers upon a visual sighting. Hynek investigated first-kind encounters in 1983 in New York State. Local residents and commuters just 40 miles from New York City had been reporting sightings of an unusual object in the night skies for over a year and a half. Sightings were reported on at least 50 separate nights during the 18-month period. Over 9,000 eyewitnesses, lawyers, teachers, CPAs, advertising executives, nurses, and factory workers reported seeing the unidentified phenomena. Newspapers and television almost weekly carried reports of the sightings. From different places throughout the area, eyewitnesses all reported seeing the same thing.
I looked up, and right over my head, virtually, and it wasn't far off, it was right over my head and very still, there was a rim of lights in the shape of a triangle.
It was just a tremendous object. It was anywhere from wingtip to wingtip, about 50 or 60 yards.
These were very, very unusual lights. I've never seen anything like it in my life, and so I pulled my car over and I had to take a look.
I mean, he would drive down the road and look up in the sky.
Some people, like Bob and Lori Pozzioli, were determined to film the object.
And then one night, he spotted this one round object. And that's when he called me, and he said, quick, let's get the camera. And we did.
Oh, good God.
What do you think?
I don't know.
Not quite.
I'm going to tell you something, honey. I don't know what the hell it is.
It's rotating.
Bob and Lori photographed this unidentified flying object near their home in Brewster, New York. Bob is a vice president in a Manhattan computer firm. Some of their friends and Lori's parents thought they were crazy, despite this photographic evidence.
Yeah, it's turning very, very slowly.
9,000 odd people have seen this thing, or whatever it is, and they all just can't be crazy.
Bob and Lori have 2 children. They are concerned about what they saw in the sky. They also wonder why the government hasn't investigated the event. Their concern is shared by David Scarpino, an accountant who works in New York City. Scarpino, a family man, has publicly called for a government investigation. He and others, like Bill Healy, a meteorologist at the county airport, made this demand at a town meeting. Public furor has been led by County Clerk Dennis Sant. Sant feels that a government investigation is indicated by the fact that eyewitnesses have all reported seeing the same thing.
You know, the movement was almost like a probing movement. It was very slow, and it stopped periodically and stationary, where it just came to a standstill, and then it would move to another position, and the movement from one position to another was just extremely slow.
Now, the speed at which it was going at that point was very slow, because I had to walk at a very slow, deliberate gait to keep up with the lights. Every step I took, it moved a little bit.
It moved in a very straight line, very slowly. There was absolutely no noise.
When I walked away from it, at that point, it started to rotate virtually, almost as it was on an axis. It didn't make a big loop. It just rotated.
It appeared, as I said, to rotate in the sky, change lights. Aircraft, I don't care how well precise you want to be in flying those suckers, you're not going to be able to make them move 90 degrees. All right, this thing did apparently rotate. You can't do that with aircraft.
Could it have been an aircraft or many smaller